So what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Today we've got another fantastic guest on. So he is an Amazon bestselling author with 3 change-making books. I'm a big fan of his work. One of the books you may have heard of is the Testosterone Optimization Therapy Bible, and also Living a Fully Optimized Life. Mr. J. Campbell, how you doing?
Oliver, what's up, brother, man? Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. I always enjoy and consider myself privileged, humbled, and honored to speak about the things that obviously I'm so passionate about. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Anytime, man. And it's great to have you on because I think we've definitely got some parallels in the way that we think and our views and kind of our view on life and fitness, which is great. What I love about you is you're a true master in your field, right? And you take a no-nonsense approach to health and fitness compared to a lot of the bullshit that you see around nowadays. And you're also a very well-established figure. So where did this start for you? When was kind of day one of J. Campbell being a fitness enthusiast?
Awesome, man. Good questions. Truthfully, to go really way back, I was the oldest of 9 children, and my dad, we were 6 boys, 3 girls. My dad was kind of ascending the corporate ladder in his life. And in ascending the corporate ladder, we were basically, at an early age, I was poverty stricken. And then my dad, through, intelligence, hard work, wit, just basically grit, rose up the corporate ladder in the businesses and industries that he was in. And at the time, I hated it because I was constantly moving, right? Like I was in 5 high schools in 5 different states in 4 years, during my youth, but it prepared me to become the person that I became because I was so adept at switching, personality styles, dealing with different ethnicities and races and creeds and colors and all of these things. So it really allowed me as I got older to be able to communicate effectively with anyone, right? To be able to relate, to be engaging, to be charismatic, all of those things. So that's kind of really, what took me down the path. I always tell people that sports, was the real uniting force in my early life, dealing with that moving all over the place and being the new guy at the new city all the time. And so I was a really, really good athlete competitively. I was a great soccer and basketball player. I ended up playing in college, and then I had a small cup of coffee. I played overseas in Austria for about 6 months, a little less than 6 months. And then that, just that mindset, that athletic will do anything to win mindset really was what I think championed me, in my 20s. And without getting into a long story, because the majority of people who do know me, and I'm not saying that your audience does, but the majority of people have heard this story, my arc story so many times. But I was kicked in the testicles playing basketball still competitively at 29 in a men's rec league. And I got worn down. I was always very studious of my body and like how things worked and everything, but I didn't know anything about testosterone. And about 3 months, 2.5 to 3 months later, I started feeling run down. And I was just purely lucky. I was working as a salesperson for the Los Angeles Times as a newspaper. This was when I was 29, way back in 1999. And the guy that I went to see was a PPO doctor. And he was just like, hey, man, I'm going to recommend you to an endocrinologist. And again, there are no coincidences in his life. The endocrinologist that he recommended me happened to be a Harvard-trained guy named Dr. Raymond Scruggs. And, he did blood work on me, and he was like, bro, you have the testosterone levels of a geriatric. He's like, I can fix you. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, how are you going to fix me? He's like, I can put you on therapeutic testosterone. And at the time, it didn't mean anything to me, but he was like, look, before you do this, there are some risks involved, and I want you to be fully cognizant. I can help you. I'm a master at this, but, go home and talk to your wife and let me know if you guys are okay. So anyway, I went home, and, my wife knew I was a studious guy, and she was basically like, yeah, go ahead, let's do it. And so, fast forward 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks, whatever. And I felt like $1 million, man. I mean, I was just like, wow. And, he wanted to take me off because I'm only 30 years old and stuff at the time. I turned 30 now later. And I was like, no, hell no, bro. You're not taking me off this. This is the magic, the magic bullet. This is the holy grail. So from that point on at 30, fast forward, right? Because I'll be 50 in February. But, I became very studious of therapeutic testosterone. And I, essentially mastered it from a scientific angle. And then, of course, empirical by using it. And I worked with numerous doctors. I used all the delivery systems. I experimented with all the ancillary medications that, a guy is supposed to use. And obviously, my friends at the time, because again, this is back in the infancy of the internet, were people that I met on underground bodybuilding forums or performance enhancement culture, which most of them are still around today. They just, very few people actually go there now because there's all these different other, places that people go to that they don't go there anymore. But anyway, they would, the people that finally met me, and I always throw Mike Cernovich's name out there because him and I were very good friends before he became famous. And, he said to me back in 2013, he's like, bro, you got to write a book on this. He's like, you know more about this than any doctor. And I was kind of like, well, I was doing well as a salesperson, and my wife and I owned a residential real estate company. I didn't want to threaten my background or my livelihood by getting involved in testosterone. And I sent the white paper that I had written. It was very small and minimal, but obviously it was very surgical, to an attorney, to Rick Collins, who's now one of the most famous attorneys in that realm in the world. And I said, hey, Rick, man, if I, as a layperson with a non-medical background or degree, if I put this paper into a book, what would the risk be? And he was an attorney at that time. He was like, oh, well, there's risks and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I shelved it. But I had also sent it to two other people. One of them was Nelson Virgil. And Nelson Virgil was, at the time, the only guy in the world that had ever written a book on testosterone. He wrote a book called Testosterone, A Man's Guide. And he was a guy who has, to this day still, AIDS. And so he was suffering from HIV, and he was attempting to figure out how to extend his life because he was given a death sentence back then. And so he saw it, and he didn't know who I was, but he responded to me about 2 months later because he was actually back home in Venezuela. And he was like, I don't know who you are, but this is absolutely amazing. You have to put this into the hands of men. The world deserves this. And so helping me, which he did, and I always say stepping on the shoulders of giants, he mentored me. And Mike also was involved a little bit at the beginning, but Mike and I are both too insane to work together ever. We're still best friends. He was over at my house here last night, but it came out in November of 2015. And obviously fast forward to now, I met all sorts of people. I became the books, the TRT manual was the first one. And then the book you mentioned, the TOT Bible, they're still right now to this day, the #1 and #2 selling books of all time on testosterone. Obviously that created a massive brand awareness for me. And I met all sorts of amazing people, especially doctors and researchers. And subsequently it's led to me, writing 3 other books, one of which very few people actually know this. The Metabolic Blowtorch Diet is actually the 3rd highest selling book ever on intermittent fasting. Right. So I really do have a really awesome grasp of what I call health optimization. Right. So I know the clinical side, and then I also know the bro side, really, really well. And obviously I'm very gifted, if that's my superpower, of bridging connections between the clinical world and the bro world. And so I've, introduced a lot of doctors to a lot of the top guys in the bro side of things, and, built some amazing allegiances. And, I think that's kind of the whole background story of how I got on your show here today.
That's an epic story, man. That's really amazing. And I think the great point that you made there is your book is basically the only book on testosterone. Because I remember when I started learning about TRT, I was like, right, let's see what different books are out there. And all I was recommended and all I saw was Jay Campbell, Jay Campbell, Jay Campbell. And I was like, shit, this must be the shit. And then I read it and I was like, wow, this is pretty epic. And I think, especially in 2020 with guys, there is a significant lack of optimization when it comes to testosterone, and you're seeing it with guys nowadays, and it is part of the culture that causes them to maybe act out, not be as fulfilled, not be as happy because their testosterone is so low. So what are some of the biggest signs that you see in guys that their just testosterone's absolutely ruined?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's, again, there's no coincidences in life. I had not seen Mike Cernovich in 8 or 9 months, right? And him and his wife went into wine country yesterday with their 2 little baby daughters, and just texted my wife and I in the day, and we're like, hey, we're in Temecula. We're in the night at a bed and breakfast. What are you guys doing? We know you guys are real close to us now, because I just moved my family down here about a month ago, and actually 3 weeks ago. And we're like, oh, just come over. So anyway, he came over, and him and I just got into this conversation. And again, Tim and I, it's old news, but he goes, wow, I never thought I would say this to you, man. But he's like, right now, the #1 problem in the world is that men are pussies. He's like, it's insane to think that the things that you and I were talking about 12 years ago is now the biggest crisis, mechanism / indicator in the world. And, so to your point, I brought that up because, dude, testosterone, inefficiency of testosterone levels in men is the single greatest degradation, construct of society right now. Men are so weak. They're so incapable of like being strong, being a powerful husband, being a powerful father. And, I'll get to your question as far as like indicators and stuff like that, but it's such a compelling statement right now in the world to see so many weak-minded people, especially men, because again, dude, it's all due to suboptimal testosterone levels. And again, obviously, as an expert, I don't need to quantify that. I can tell people who hear me say that right now and say, oh, bullshit. Well, read my book, dude. I fucking wrote about this shit back in 2014 and 2015, right? Like I saw this coming. I mean, there were studies that told people that men would be extinct as a species by 2040. That's the Hebrew University study. It's in both of my books. But that's where we are, Oliver. And, the question, that you asked me is like, what are the signs? I mean, the signs are being a pussy, right? Like literally not being a strong man, having low energy, having your wife boss you around, thinking that toxic masculinity is a thing. That's the dumbest thing that was ever created by society. The biological signs are having, brain fog, having low energy, obviously sexual dysfunction. Everybody thinks that testosterone levels are coincided or correlated to sexual dysfunction. It really isn't. Sexual dysfunction is mostly a product of dopaminergic signaling pathways in the brain being dysfunctional. And that actually comes nowadays from, addictions to porn, addictions to blue light, obviously diet, poor sleep hygiene, all of those things. But it's mostly, the number one side effect or sign of a testosterone deficiency is brain fog. A guy, and again, this is happening in 20-year-old men. This is not just some 40 to 50-year-old aging man issue. This is happening across the world in everything. And again, in the book, without going into a very detailed, convoluted discussion, because it's all in the book if you want it. And by the way, let me just say this right now that, anybody that watches this podcast and, any podcast I do, I give away my works for free, right? Because I want to educate the world. And obviously I'm very altruistic, but if you go to jccampbell.com/free books, you'll get a free PDF of the TOT Bible and the Metabolic Blowtorch Diet, which, I would say that single-handedly in the world, those two books have been responsible for massive change, transformational change in men and women around the world. But again, back to what you were saying, the question is that the reality is that brain fog is the number one side effect and symptom of testosterone deficiency. And that really manifests in just like a lack of having energy, right? Like it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you feel like you want to go home and take a nap. And so many men have that. Now, again, what are the causes? Sleep deficiency. Okay. If somebody was going to fix testosterone deficiency, I would first tell them to look at the quality of their sleep. And again, most men today who play video games, who are addicted to porn, who are addicted to CNN or Netflix or whatever it is that they watch, their dopaminergic signaling pathways in the brain are being rewired because of the screens, right? That's not me hypothesizing. That's, fact. That's established now and understood. There are many studies out there about this. And again, you can talk to anyone in the clinical community, and the clinical community tells you now that the majority of their patients are literally 20 to 24-year-old men whose parents bring them into the doctor's office and say, my son can't get an erection. And the doctor looks at him and says, well, what's going on? And, the kid's embarrassed or whatever, but the kid's got brain damage, which can be obviously reversed, but through dopaminergic signaling pathways being corrupted through porn and blue light sensitivity and video games. And so when they're with a woman, they can't actually physiologically get erect because of everything being screwed up, because of everything they're watching, again, on the screen. So we're in a crazy world, bro. We're not even talking about like the system, the endemic onslaught from the food, from the air, from the water. Right? Like if you're living in the States or any first world Western country, you are under siege endocrinologically from the food, the water, the boxed foodstuffs, alcohol, sugar. I mean, dude, the plastic, right? Like I'm drinking an energy drink right now. This is, very clean mountain water, but I mean, it's still in plastic. There's, BPA and polyphenols. I mean, there's so much shit that's around us. I mean, even you and I watching right now on the screens, right? Like you should be wearing your blue light sunglasses. I haven't scolded you, but we are being bombarded, dude, literally bombarded, right? So for a guy like me, I'm telling people all the time, what's the best intervention? Well, you can do all those natural things, right? You can improve your sleep, you can biohack, you can wear blue light glasses, you can not watch porn, you can get 8 hours of sleep. There's a lot of things you can do naturally. But the biggest tool in the tool belt is therapeutic testosterone, right? And it's not for everybody. It's not, and most people think that I'm a shill for therapeutic testosterone because I promote it, but I'm not. I tell people that, I want you to be as natural as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. And you only go to therapeutic testosterone when it becomes the last resort, right? And again, it is the biggest tool in the tool belt. Now, a guy like your age, I'm not going to tell you to get on testosterone, right? If a guy like you has severe, is type 2 hypogonadal classification or diagnosis, I'm going to tell you to do all these things naturally. I'm even going to also tell you to take like human chorionic gonadotropin, which is HCG, or even clomiphene, which are medications designed to enhance fertility, stimulate follicle stimulating hormone, and also luteinizing hormone, over and above testosterone, because it's not going to disturb your natural testosterone function. But if you're 35 and you show up with that diagnosis, I'm going to recommend you go on testosterone again, because it's the biggest tool in the tool belt. And having the biggest tool in the tool belt at your disposal is going to allow you to avoid, all the other hyperanal things that you would have to do to try to maintain a state of optimization naturally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. Yeah. And you touched on some great points there. What I really like is you said, try and fix things naturally first, right? And I think, like, for me, I get so many direct messages from guys and, questions going, I need to get on TRT, bro. I need to get on TRT. And I say, well, what is your lifestyle looking like, man? What is your diet like? Are you sleeping well? Are you doing these natural things first to try and fix your shit? Because that is priority number one, what you're saying. And then, like you said, as you age, as you get a bit older, your testosterone naturally starts to drop, as it does when you get past 25 and into your 30s and older. That's when you look at something like TRT therapy, essentially, unless you've got some kind of, predisposed issue as well. And I think, the problem is that people want this quick fix again, don't they? They want like the therapy, and they don't want to do the work, like lift the weights. They don't want to do this basic bro stuff that is actually fucking backed by science and is important for your test levels, right?
Dude, everybody wants the easy button. We are now in a society today where people are so lazy. That's another thing Mike and I were talking about last night. Like, I mean, look, dude, these are the facts, right? And this is coming from people, who are world-class authors like Mike Cernovich and Jay Campbell. We don't publish books anymore, bro, because there's no point in publishing a book. No one reads. This is a statistical fact. 10% of people who purchase a book finish the first chapter. 10%, right? The studies get even worse when you start looking at the combination of reading an actual manual, meaning paper, print pages, versus people who watch videos, right? It's insane. Like the top online marketers now, which I work with a bunch of them, will tell you that the biggest game is getting people to actually not purchase your course, because any dumbass will purchase a course, but it's actually getting them to finish the course and then proving that they finished the course, right? So it's like, imagine that. That's how sorry and devolved we have become as a species, that people literally pay money for things that they're attempting to like enhance or accelerate or improve their life, and they can't even do it, right? So again, like, Mike and I were joking about that last night. They're like, well, what books you got in line, And I'm like, well, I have this amazing peptide book, but it's been sitting there for 4 months. I mean, a peptide book can, change the planet. There's so many people that want to be educated, and we wrote the book 4 months ago, but dude, I can't get a single publishing company on the entire planet to actually format graphically and do conversions to teach people how to use peptides, right? Because peptides is science, right? You got to understand milligrams and micrograms, and you got to, understand reconstitution, a denatured peptide versus an unnatured. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And it's like so many people don't understand any of that. And like even going into the world of pharma, I can't get somebody to do all that work. So that book has been shelved. And, when Mike and I were talking about it last night, he was like, why even fucking publish it, bro? He's like, just create a video course. Right. So, I mean, that's kind of where we are as, as a society. where people, as you said, are so inherently lazy. They literally want everything done for them. But you said the magic words, do the work. You won't do anything or achieve anything in your life unless you do the work. And, again, I'm just stepping on the shoulders of giants, but to achieve any level of mastery, you have to put 20 years into the trade, right? I'm not standing up here in front of you talking about testosterone, saying I'm an expert, but I'm 30 years in the trade, right? Like I've been on therapeutic testosterone for 20 years, and I've been studying, the field of performance enhancement and human health and optimization for 30, right? So, and dude, I don't know everything, right? Like I learn shit every day. There's no doubt about it. But like, there's so many people out there today that, promote themselves as gurus or experts. And good, people can do whatever they want, man. I don't care. But they don't really have any credibility. But then, as I said, like the average person the bar is so low that the average person doesn't even know what mastery constitutes. So again, that's why you have so many guys out there that, pimp themselves as gurus to unsuspecting buyers, because the unsuspecting buyer doesn't even understand what a guru is. They wouldn't know how to define what a guru is.
100%. And I can agree with you, even just from seeing the accounts that you see on Twitter and stuff, people claiming their CEOs, claiming their gurus.
Oh, I laugh so hard at that stuff.
With all that kind of
social media social media has gamified the world.
Yeah.
It's allowed people to create as I say, an illusion from inside their delusion. Right. So it's like, again, people can do whatever they want. Don't never hate the player, hate the game. But you just have to be, as a person, watching this podcast, listening to you and I, you have to develop your skill set to be able to spot a person that you can actually learn from.
100%. Yeah. And I think critical thinking nowadays is probably the number one skill you have to develop, with the amount, like you said, the plethora of information, the plethora of people putting on facades. It is, how do I separate the signal from the noise, right? And who do I decide is credible and who's not? I think that's a big thing.
It's not easy. It's really not easy. I think about this all the time. I mentor a lot of younger guys, and they ask me that, like, well, how am I supposed to know? And I'm like, you just have to study. You have to listen. You have to pay attention. Everybody has to read. I have a daughter, two daughters, a 12-year-old. Well, they're both it'll be 13 and 11 very soon. But, they don't read. I mean, they're both really, really smart, but, I'm constantly coaching them. And at one time they did. But now this distance learning shit in the United States, everything is a disaster, right? Schooling is a farce at this point. I told my wife the other day, I'm like, and I'm just going to put them in both in classes. I'm going to buy some classes from like Punjabi or one of these, Kajabi or whatever they're called, and just put them in these classes for $10 and have them learn a skill, rather than this nonsense, and you hit it, Oliver, out of the park when you say critical thinking. I mean, there isn't critical thinking taught. Everything is based on emotion and feeling. There's no logic and reason anymore. There's no deductive reasoning. So as a human being right now, you have to learn to critically think. And that's a shame, dude, because, truthfully, I came up in a different age. I was taught to critically think, professionally critically think, right? Like, let me give you a good analogy. I mean, imagine this, right? Like, I didn't even have fucking computers or internet in college. Like, I didn't even get into the internet and have a computer until I was 24 years old, right? And even then, I was using CompuServe or Prodigy. And it was dial-up modems, right? It was like a game, you would, and it would connect, and you'd be like, yes, I'm on the internet, right? And then you had like no speed, and you could never see anybody. And it's like a million light years away from what kids have today. But what I did learn to do is I learned to go to the library, and I learned to read a Dewey Decimal System. And I learned how to use the card catalog, and I learned how to actually fucking research and go down aisles and pull out books and study them and take highlighters and write notes. Whereas today, what do kids do, bro? They just fucking, hey Siri, Google, Alexa. Nobody learns anything. They just get the answer. There's no study. So again, as you said it, there isn't critical thinking. See, now Siri's listening to me, right? But I mean, it's such a joke. I don't even use it, but they're always listening. But the thing is like, that's the biggest issue, is that, if you grew up in the internet, and, a lot of people in your age group and stuff like that, you're technically a millennial, right? Or are you Gen Z? You're a millennial.
Yes, right? I'm millennial. Yeah.
Okay. So Gen Z which is below you, and then whatever the next generation are, which where my daughters are, they completely grew up without books and reading. Everything has been online. I mean, dude, they're doing away with textbooks in college right now. It's fucking amazing to me, right? Now, I get it. The technology's shifting and, we want a different world and stuff like that. But it goes back to what you said, dude. And I could do a whole podcast on this. Like, if you do not learn how to critically think, and critically thinking is not asking a fucking robot what the answer is, then you're done. And guess what? To go conspiratorial, because, we weren't going to end this podcast without talking about that. Don't you think that the creators of this want you to think a certain way? I mean, hello. So, I mean, come on, dude. I mean, if you don't learn, and again, anyone can learn to critically think by reading fucking books. I don't give a shit if you listen to the books or if you read Kindle or if you, like me and you have a fucking, wall of books over here. Cause I still like to hold books, right? Like when I do cardio, I literally hold ink and paper and I highlight and I read certain passages and take pictures of them and shit, whatever. We all have our own ways to learn, but if you don't learn and you don't understand how to critically think, you're fucking done. It's over. Forget it. You're going to be a slave sitting in a cubicle, making money for somebody else. It's that simple.
Agreed. And I think a really good example of that this year, especially, is COVID, right? There's a lot of stuff going on with that at the minute. Especially this year, I've seen a lot of craziness. I mean, Jay, what is your kind of view on what's been going on at the minute?
Be careful. A Pandora's box. All right, I'll give you two angles. I'll give you the scientific angle, and then I'll give you the conspiratorial angle. And obviously, it's hard to separate them at this point, right? Like, so from the scientific angle, right? Like, my business partner and I, my business partner is one of the smartest biochemical engineers on the planet, right? Nick Andrews. Like, you put him in a room and with 10 people with 180 IQ, and he's going to finish number one. He can talk about any subject, and he's high conscious, right? So he's spiritual, which is very rare combination of people. But him and I were writing not papers, but blogs for my site about SARS-CoV-2, back in fucking February, right? And, anybody can fact check me now. It's October 28th. Go back and look at the articles we wrote about COVID in February and March. We were way out in front of anybody talking about this. And, Nick's got friends in the scientific community. We also have friends on the dark web. We knew what was going on way before, the mainstream knew about it, right? So I was writing about what COVID was as an actual reactive agent, a bioweapon, a form of an insidious virus, whatever you want to call it. So from a scientific angle, it's real, it exists, it has killed people, it does attack the heme in the red blood cells. Initially when doctors were losing patients, they were ventilating people because the people were turning blue in the face, and because medicine is so fucking full of quackery for the most part, they instantly thought they needed to intubate the people because they couldn't breathe, but they didn't realize that the disease itself was attacking the red blood cells. Again, the iron, the heme in the red blood cells, and then constricting the oxygen supply and killing them. So most of the people that were initially ventilated in COVID died because they basically, further restricted their breathing capabilities. And then once you ventilate a person, they have to be on the ventilator. So anyway, all the inflamed and comorbid and infirm people who got ventilated were dead. Right. Obviously, this became this game of COVID. In my opinion, there was herd immunity developed probably within the third or fourth month of it, maybe even the first 6 months of it. Nobody really knows when it was sweeping the world. The theory is it started sweeping the world in November of last year. Right. So now we're 12 months into it. But as the corporatocracy, the cabal, the new world order, whatever the fuck you want to call the people that run the planet, they made it a giant, control game, and wear a mask, became this, thing that you had to do. And then they started separating society based on people that would wear masks and people that wouldn't wear masks, and I'll just, throw this out there. My copywriter and I wrote a 10,000 word article on masks, right? We examined all of the science, all of the data. We went back 50 years. Why do surgeons wear masks? I mean, we looked at everything, and we basically came to the conclusion. Again, this is scientifically backed. You can put a link to this article and podcast. Amazing article. I've had thousands of researchers and scientists and doctors read it. We came to the conclusion that masks are absolutely useless, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it does not protect against the size of the virus, right? The micron particle, the size of what it is. It also travels through sinus pathways, nasal passages. I mean, there's so many areas of exposure on the human body that a mask is virtually useless, right? But the placebo effect is real. And, if you manifest a thought process or a thought construct that you are protected by wearing a mask, that's fine. But scientifically, you can't substantiate that or support that. So clearly, the world, again, the controllers, whoever they are, they use the mask as a massive hedge. It's a hegemonic control structure and a control grid to create fear, incite terror. I mean, bro, in the United States now, the majority of old people are petrified of COVID, right? Like they won't go outside. They're the kind that have their masks on with their windows rolled up, driving down the road, the kind of people that will attack anyone in public if your mask falls down below your nose. You're exposing thousands of people to death, right? Like those are the type of people. And, ultimately this has just been, like I said, a gigantic scam. People call it the scamdemic, the pandemic, whatever, to further institute control for the people that are in power, right? And if you really start looking at the science proves that all these COVID deaths are not COVID deaths at all. They're basically people who are already comorbid, who already had secondary and tertiary disease factors, and they got COVID and then they died, due to the disease that they were already in an advanced stage of. And then all medical system, again, under the control structure, labeled them COVID deaths. So when you really do the math, and again, this is all fact, okay? Like statistically, as far as how many people have died on the planet, and it's just insane that they have brainwashed people every which way but Sunday, that they have to wear a mask, that masks aren't protective, or that masks are protective, and then, obviously adding on to the fact that they have fake numbers that they position all around the world. And, now here we are, dude, again, we're October 28th. The second wave is hitting. And dude, a lot of countries on this planet right now are in purely draconian measures now. They're shutting down everything. I mean, you're in the UK, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So, my friends in the UK are telling me that in certain places in the UK, it's fucking nuts. Right? Like, my company in shipping right now, internationally, our products, like we're dealing with all sorts of craziness. We have FedEx. We don't ship anywhere but FedEx, so it's guaranteed delivery. And even FedEx guys are telling us that they're delivering shit and customs is seizing it, or, there's just graft and corruption in shipping and, the package doesn't get to the customer. I mean, dude, shit's weird right now. That's all I can say. Obviously I'm a very positive, half glass full guy, but this whole COVID thing, dude, the whole world is over it, man. We're at a point now where it's like, you know what? I would rather fucking risk dying from COVID than wearing a mask and getting pushed into a corner by people because they think that I'm a risk because I don't want to wear a mask. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with kind of a lot of the statements you make there. And I think going back to that point on critical thinking as well, if you're just taking one reference point for COVID, then you're getting that all wrong. Personally, myself, have been, doing my own research, looking at certain facts and numbers. And I personally don't think it is as serious as what, the media make out. I don't believe it's a complete hoax, but I do think that people are profiting off the fact that people are scared, people are worried. There is an illness that we've potentially not dealt with before, and people and marketers are just lapping it up to drive their own, like you said, new world order and their own, way of the world.
Well, hold on. Something you said, very true. It's not a hoax. And, I've been telling people this since back in January. This is a very real virus, but yes, they have glommed onto it to make money, to control people, to herd people into a sense of fear, to herd people into a sense of less control, again, to take away critical thinking. But you are absolutely right. Again, you can talk to, and I've done this, I've done streams. You can talk to doctors and nurses that have worked in critical care places and have dealt with COVID patients. And again, it's very, very real disease, but it's not as prevalent as people think that it is, A, because we developed herd immunity, and B, because most of the people that are dying from it are already diseased. It doesn't affect healthy people in the mainstream as much as they attempt to tell you that it does. In fact, I saw this last night, it made me mind blown. There has not been more than 25 people in the entire world under the age of 20 who have died from COVID in the whole world, right? So again, it's a disease of the elderly, the infirmed, the comorbid, and the inflamed. Again, people who are not living the lifestyle that I preach, right? It's that simple.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the stat is something like, if you're under 50, you're healthy, 99.98% survival rate, which is crazy. When you compare that to, I don't know, car crashes, you will be mortified by how many more car crashes there are, right? And even the Kanye podcast the other night, he was saying that, you know, there's like 1,000 black babies aborted a day, right? Like, and you compare that to COVID, it's like, well, the numbers don't even compare. But, you know, the fact that we are, again, just kind of brainwashed and programmed into just listening to one narrative, that's what stems from the fear. And again, people don't care about the logic. They care about the emotions that gives them, right? And the feelings they get, right? It's all emotions and feelings.
Right, dude. Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. 100%. So I'm glad we touched on that, and I want to move on to something now a little bit more upbeat and a little bit more positive. And it's to do with living a fully optimized life, and I think that means so many different things, right? And I want to touch on first kind of the physical side of it, and I want to move on then to kind of the spiritual side, which I think is great as well. So physically, what does, you know, living a fully optimized life mean to you?
It's a great question. Obviously, I wrote this amazing book. I just don't even know where it is in my office because this is my real office, but it's right here. How to break free from sick care medicine before it kills you. So, you know, a very high level discussion of what does it mean? It means that you are fully responsible. One of my good friends, Dr. Jim Meehan, you know, always likes to say that you become the scientist of your own health, right? You unhook from the medical establishment, you know, again, what I call sick care, and you become fully responsible for your own health. And, you know, it's a reach for most people because, you know, as you know, Oliver, and you'll definitely know as you start, you know, getting the next 10, 15 years of your life, as you start meeting a lot more people who are, you know, addicted to the sick care system. Most people mentally don't give a shit about their health until they don't have their health. It's just the way it is. You know, they're about their job, they're about their work, their grind, whatever, you know, their relationships, their kids, you know, whatever it is, their car, travel. They don't give a shit about their health until it's gone, right? And then when it's gone, they reach to the sick care established medical system, which ain't going to help you because all they give a shit about is treating your symptoms and medicating you, right? And taking your money. Versus what I preach and create and live and espouse my life by, which is, again, fully optimized health, which is taking full responsibility of everything on your end, right? Like supplements, diet, training, cardiovascular with resistance, you know, sleep hygiene, obviously mindfulness training, which, you know, we can talk about in spirituality and consciousness. I mean, but that is the pillars of living fully optimized, because if you don't live and embrace those pillars fully optimized, you're going to be dependent and hooked on to sick care, and sick care is a no-win battle, right? And, you know, I've talked about this 1,000 times on podcasts, but I'll just mention it really quick. I mean, literally the sick care model is to get you hooked into their system at 40, and really even earlier if you're a woman because of pregnancy, and become dependent on their medications until literally, this is the truth, until you either run out of money and go bankrupt, okay, or get sick and die from the side effects of all the 30 to 40 pills you're taking a day. And again, big pharma, sick care itself, the entire, you know, giant institutional system that controls it all, they would prefer that you actually went bankrupt and died at the same time, because they're essentially siphoning money out of you until you get to a point. And, you know, the average person, I think, in America now that dies due to sick care, due to a hospital infirm, is between 67 and 72. So like when you really start looking at the math, and obviously I have, it's insane the amount of money that the average person between the age of 65 and 72 in Western countries spends on sick care to stay alive, right? And remember, you're not alive taking 30 pills a day. You're absolutely a walking corpse, right? So again, living fully optimized is just living your life devoid of that bullshit, focused on living very vigorous and, again, taking control, becoming the scientist of your own health, using supplements, using anti-aging medications like I espouse, like testosterone and peptides and metformin and desiccated thyroid and all these other things that you can take and get, either via online pharmacies or via a script from a physician who obviously practices optimized healthcare. So that's kind of the difference, man. I mean, this is very bleeding edge. Whenever I talk to people about it, I mean, obviously, you're into the fitness game and stuff like that, so it's not for you. But I mean, again, we're fringe, bro. The majority of people are fucking dying. They're rotting from the inside out, and until they actually take a really hard look at their life and start recognizing that health is the most important thing, right? Like my dad taught me this when I was a little kid. I think I was like 7 or 8, maybe 8 or 9, I don't remember. But his statement to me was like, Jay, I want you to know something. There's only 2 things that a man has in their life, and that's their health and their integrity. And without one, you got neither, right? And I was like, damn, dude, at the time, it didn't mean anything to me now. But looking back, I was like, fuck, dude, my dad was a pretty smart guy, and it's totally true. But I mean, how many people right now, Oliver, still don't even take their health seriously? Right? Like I said, guys come to me all the time, they're 45, 50 years old and they're like, worth 10 million. And they're like, you're the guy, man. What can I do? And I'm like, nothing, bro. How am I going to unwind 30 years of degradation that you've done to yourself? Right? Like, I'm not saying it's over for you, but you got a long fucking hard work, road ahead of you, because you're not going to unwind shit in a 3-month program. Go buy somebody else's horse shit, right? Because that ain't going to work. You've destroyed your body. You're 40% body fat. You have high levels of inflammation. Right? You drink alcohol and eat sugar and you're a fucking mess. You're on Adderall just to stay awake. Right? Like, so, it's important that people right now, like younger guys watching the show, like, putting their health number one, because there's nothing more important. Who gives a shit how much money you have if you can't travel the world and enjoy it? If you're a fat motherfucker and you can't climb, 6 flights of stairs, if something happens and you're a burning building, you're done. Right? So it's like, health is first and foremost. I mean, I want you to be focused on your job and I want you to have a good life and make money and provide for your wife and kids and family, but put your health first, man. It's always that way.
100%. And I think a big thing that I preach is, they're not mutually exclusive either, right? And what you find is when you are optimizing your health, when you are on top of your game, when you're eating well, when you're just smashing it in the fitness and health side of things, guess what? The rest of your life improves drastically as well, right? And I've seen it with guys go through, horrible breakups. They come to me, they've overweight, they feel very down. They're really, at the bottom, right? And then they go through this process of health and fitness and, challenging themselves, doing the work. And man, they turn out completely different guys, because guess what? Once you start taking ownership of your body, you start taking ownership of your job and your relationships start getting better. You're more present, right? Like you start reading more, you start just being a more interesting person, I find. And I think that that's a really important thing to note. It's like, you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. They work in tandem and they actually aid each other in helping you become better.
100%, man. Well put.
Awesome, man. And I want to talk about the other side of living a fully optimized life, because I had a look at your website earlier and a big part of your logo now is raise your vibrations, which I think is pretty cool. So what does that mean?
Can you hear me? I think your audio went out.
Oh, cool. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, your audio, no audio.
Okay.
There you go. You're back.
Am I back?
Just say what you just said, because it couldn't hear you.
All good. So I was saying I've visited your website recently and you've got raise your vibrations on your name and your logo now. So for the audience that may not know what that is, do you want to give a bit of a rundown on what that is about?
Yeah, for sure. So, literally the backstory is, well, first off, I've always been walking the consciousness path. I just never really let it out into the mainstream. I've been like a student of the esoteric. I call it like the search for mankind's hidden meaning or ancestry. But I've been studying this kind of stuff literally since I was like 13 years old. I just never really let it out into the mainstream. But I went to Peru for 13 days last July. And I spent, I went everywhere, man. My wife and I and my real estate company, my sales director and his wife spent 11 days in the Sacred Valley, 13-day trip, day there, day out. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. It was just so like transformational the energy of Peru, dude, is like unlike anywhere else on the planet, right? Like you have to be there to experience it, to be at those places like Machu Picchu and the Andes, you know, the Sacred Valley. I mean, there's just so many amazing places going on there. But when I came back, sitting on the plane, I just felt, as I tell people, molecularly altered. And I told my wife, I was like, I'm changing everything. I'm pivoting right now as like, you know, the TRT, the testosterone optimization therapy guide, to become, you know, the consciousness biohacker, right? Or whatever I was going to call myself at the time. I think I was calling myself the spiritual biohacker or something. I don't know. I had all these different names I was working, but I knew in that plane ride sitting there that I was going to pivot, you know, and a lot of my friends and my closest colleagues and, you know, people thought I was fucking crazy. They're like, dude, you can't do that, man. You're fucking, you know, you're going all woo woo. And I was like, nope, I'm doing it. I don't really care, you know? And honestly, like, as soon as I got back, I talked to my media company, my social media company, which, you know, sadly went out of business during COVID. Thankfully, I kept a couple of the people that worked there who now work for me directly. But I said, look, man, we're pivoting. This is happening. You know, my website, which was the #1 website in the world for testosterone, which was, TOT, it was TRT, and then it was TOT, revolution.com. I was like, I'm fucking killing it. I'm redirecting everything. It's just going to be jccampbell.com. Somebody is still cyber stalking Jay Campbell. I don't know. They're squatting on that thing. Eventually somebody's going to come to me and like, hey man, for $100 grand, we'll sell it to you. I'm like, fuck off. Right. But like, I knew that I was shifting, you know, not forgetting and leaving behind the testosterone stuff and the hormone stuff and the health optimization stuff, but becoming a healer, not just in the physical, but in the psycho-spiritual. Right. So like, I just shifted everything. And, you know, the slogan or the tagline that we created was raise your vibration. And, you know, I'm a big student of Dr. David Hawkins, you know, who's written a number of books on consciousness. You know, he created the map of consciousness. Crazily enough, somebody from his foundation said that I was, he's dead. He died in 2012, but his foundation released a new book recently called The Map of Consciousness Explained. And I did a video on my YouTube channel explaining the book, and they sent me a fucking copyright strike. Right. So I sent an email to them. I'm like, this is insane. Like, like the guy's like a hero of mine. Like I'm constantly promoting his books, and that whole YouTube video I was promoting his book. I'm not stealing his copyright or anything. I even had a link to his book in the video. But anyway, you know, hopefully I'll get that resolved. But the bottom line is that, you know, consciousness right now, Oliver, is the most important thing on this planet. Okay. This planet right now, truthfully, without getting into a political discussion, hangs in the balance, right? We have so many people who refuse to wake up, right? Like my statement on Twitter right now, which I've been saying for a month, is you're either in resonance or you're in dissonance. And when you're in resonance, you're of a contribution mindset, right? You're of a service mindset. You're of a loving, forgiving, peace, kindness. You truly want to help. You truly want to be acting out of contribution. When you're in dissonance, you're down here, you know, on the map of consciousness. Your victimhood, your anarchy, your self-hatred, you know, all these negative adjectives I can give you. And that's where we find ourselves right now. You know, there's too many people on this planet in self-hate, in victimhood. You know, it's not my fault. Never taking accountability or responsibility for who they are. And until we get enough people who become resonant, again, fully accountable, empowered, free, sovereign, critical thinking individuals, the planet's going to fucking reboot, dude. We're going to have either a World War III, we're going to have worse, you know, an EMP. I mean, something bad will happen and obliterate society. And then we go back to the fucking Stone Ages or whatever else happens. And then, you know, again, you know, one of the great consciousness thinkers that I read is Walter Russell. And he talks about everything started when mankind went into the jungle. And then, you know, at the base of, you know, advancement, climbed through the jungle, back to the top of the mountain, right? And that's where we are right now. And I tell people, like, we are literally this close to the top of the mountain, to getting to where we have enough of us. Because again, Hawkins says this, you know, without giving a deep dive on Hawkins, you know, again, the map of consciousness, the 200 lines, you know, 0 to 1,000, 1,000 being like a, you know, Buddha enlightened, and 0 being, you know, shame, humiliation, you hate yourself. The 200 is a line of integrity. If we do, for every person who gets to 400, 500, which is reason and love, you raise the boats, the consciousness level, the vibration of 750,000 people, right? Because again, 80% of people on the planet fall below the line of integrity. They are literally not capable of helping or intervening to save another human life due to fear and just lack of courage. It's the same thing essentially, right? But they are not integrous. Integrous is courage 200, right? When you have the ability to stop what you're doing and jump into a pool or a freeway or whatever to save another human being from death, then you have crossed the line of integrity. Now, a person like you, a person like me, we would immediately stop what we were doing and fucking put our own life on the line and help people. That's just who we are as beings. But 80% of the planet will not. And that's, again, all conclusively statistically brought up in Hawkins's books. The point is, why I'm saying all this is until we get enough people above the line of integrity, we're going to continue to have wars. We're going to continue to fight over the dumbest things like color or creed or religion or fat versus skinny or black versus white, Chinese versus Indian. I mean, it's all nonsense. So it's like, I knew that, like, as a person that had a decent sized audience and a message of resonance already in the health, that I could just take that and shift it into consciousness and go bigger audience, more people would resonate with this. And, a lot of people do. And since I decided to make this move, I've had massive increase in people following me, right? I mean, initially everybody was like, dude, you're fucking crazy. You already own testosterone. Why would you go away from that? Just specialize. You're the niche master. And I'm like, no, man, I want to talk about consciousness because that's what matters, right? So, basically, bro, just to summarize and just to level it up is that my whole goal in life now is teaching people the importance of raising their vibration, right? And what does it mean, really? Well, I mean, really, raising vibration is just increasing awareness. It's essentially understanding that consciousness is the great tool of mankind to expand the universe. And again, until we get to a point of what I call unconditional love, it's not going to happen. Planetary consciousness, whatever you want to call it. But until people love one another equally, regardless of all the other, separating and criterion factors, it's gonna end bad, bro. It's not going to work. There's going to be a bifurcation. People are going to go the transhumanism way. People are going to be like, chip me, I want to be a biobot. And then there's going to be people like us that are going to be like, nah, man, I want to be human and sovereign and free and stuff like that. But if we can get enough of us to like recognize that we don't have to have any of that, and we can all choose to be, resonant and to get along, the world will be okay, bro. But really, not to be conspiratorial, we really are this close to collapse. There's obviously very smart people who have written books about it. Jared Diamond's written books about collapse and then whatever his newest book was. But I mean, the reality is like, here we are, we're on the precipice of climbing to the top of the mountain as a species collectively, but we're still not there yet. And there's a lot of dissonance, especially with all the shit that's happened this year with COVID. So it's like, is COVID that great equalizer to finally push mankind over the edge, where we get to the point where enough of us just realize, man, this fucking nonsense has to stop, man. The threat of nuclear war, the Middle East crisis, wars, all the free energy that we have technologically that's out there that's being kept from us because the fucking control figures, want to keep us, addicted to oil and, that type of energy and coal and all that stuff. I mean, it's nonsense. So again, that's kind of my mission now. Obviously, I know a lot of stuff about optimization, and I'm happy to talk to people about it like I have today. But consciousness is my gig now, man. That's just my jam.
I love that. And I think a really good word that you use there is self-awareness, right? And actually being present. And I think that's a big part of consciousness, right? Is like to know what is going on around you, to appreciate what's going on around you, to know when you're, being overly critical, and to know, when you're being loving and all that kind of stuff. It's so important to know. And I feel, especially at the minute in the world, people are so devoid of this self-awareness. They don't know what's going on. And it's kind of like, I guess my question is, and for the audience listening, how does someone come from, at the bottom of that chart there, in that victim kind of area, and move up through integrity to kind of that higher consciousness level?
It's a great question. I mean, first off, you have to want to improve. You have to want to be a better person. You have to actually open up your mind to the reality that there's a better life out there than what you currently experience, you know? And for me, it's always just been like a sense, like this underwire, it's like a wire in me that's crossed. That's just always pushed me to want to know more and to know, you know, to peer behind the veil, to kind of get like a better look or a better understanding of like what I've been told. You know, Mike Cernovich's old blog was way before you. It's called Danger in Play. And his motto or his tagline was everything I've ever been told was a lie. And him and I were joking about that last night because he, you know, that was in the late 90s and early 2000s. And now it's all come true. We recognize that it's all bullshit. So a person, you cannot, as someone who's consciously awake right now and aware, it's not our right to attempt to awaken others. So people have to want to become aware. They have to want to, again, peer behind the veil. They have to want to understand that there's far more out there than what they've been told through their the educational systems. And again, all the norms and the mores of culture have really created the imprint, the biological identity of what we think and know, right? Like, when you're born, your parents tell you what, religion to practice and what school to go to and what team to root for. So, I mean, like, you really have to push back and become very, very aware of who you are. And obviously becoming aware of who you are is going in. I always say to go beyond, you have to go within. And once you become self-aware, or again, attempt to become self-aware, just practicing inner work, practicing mindfulness training, meditation, contemplation, introspection, going into the woods, going into nature, connecting, grounding in nature. I mean, those type of things will allow what I call mind silence to occur. And once you learn what mind silence is, where you're still with your thoughts, the drunk monkey that's telling you all these things all the time just shuts down. And you can control the drunk monkey by practicing this. Then the awareness will come to you because, in my knowings or my awareness and my learnings, I've recognized that the energy of the universe, which, some people call God, some people call it the source frequency, it becomes resonant inside you once you learn to shut off all the other BS, right? So you have the ego, and then you have your soul, which your soul is your spirit. And without going like super deep esoteric, which I can, you just have to recognize how to connect with your spirit, how to connect with your higher self, how to be aware of your soul and not, Jay Campbell or Oliver Anwar, which is just, the names of our physical beings and our ego, right? That's not who we really are at spirit level. So it's just a recognition that there's a lot more out there than what the Matrix teaches you.
I love that. And I kind of see that as kind of a deeper understanding of yourself, kind of, avoid from, like you said, the name tags that people put you on, kind of the football team that you support, all of this other stuff. There's kind of a deeper meaning to who you are and kind of, your being. That's kind of how I see it. I feel that the reason why people have such low consciousness, they have these habits, they stick to them, they watch porn, they don't move out of their own town, they have a lack of experiences, they don't travel, they don't understand a lot of things, and they're just kind of funneled into this one way of living. And I found that for me anyway, personally, having a high level of consciousness, it's been experiencing new things, doing things that have made me personally feel uncomfortable, visit new countries, see new people, and that has helped me connect with other parts of the world, society, that I feel that then allows me to resonate on a deeper level. That's my own personal view on that anyway, which I think is cool. And what do you think kind of the importance of meditation plays in kind of raising your vibrations?
So I'm going to give you a 2-minute answer and then I got to go, bro.
Sure.
My business partner just said we got to jump on this call. So
Sure.
First off, amazing show. I really appreciate you asking me very deep questions. I haven't done a show this deep and I think it's valuable in a long time. So appreciate you. Meditation is a lot of things to a lot of different people. As a person who has been practicing the art for a long time, I've kind of found out that meditation is really just mind silence. It's really just taking yourself to a place where you can be devoid of interaction, obviously physical interaction with people, but also interaction with technology or anything else that can disrupt you. A lot of people think meditation is putting on binaural beats and, listening to hip sync or whatever, mind sync or whatever those things. No, I mean, meditation is basically just shutting off everything and going to a place of, again, silence or, mind silence or stillness. A lot of people call it stillness. And just being able to just separate who Jay Campbell is as an egoic being in a physical body versus who Jay Campbell is again, the spiritual soul being, and being able to merge the two and observe, again, all the great Stoic philosophers and poets and esoteric thought leaders, talk about being able to be neutrally observant and being able to sit from a perched position and observe everything that happens, including your thoughts, with just a neutral, that's interesting, right? Like the Taoistic philosopher would say, take an "is that so" approach to everything that happens in your life, right? Somebody comes to you and says, "Hey man, you just won $4 billion in the lottery." You'd be like, "Is that so?" Somebody comes to you 10 seconds later and they say, "Oh my God, dude, your mom and dad just died in a plane crash." Is that so? So when you get to a point in your life where you can create a reality where you're not reactive, you're totally proactive, and you're calm, cool, caring, kind, and creative, right? And courageous, of course, too, all those C and K words, that's when you change your state of being. And, realistically, I could give you a million cliche statements and stuff like that, but the state of being of resonance is where you want to be, because when you're in resonance, you create a vibration or an arc field that raises the vibration of everyone around you, all life forms, including dogs and cats, right? So again, it's learning to understand how do you create a state of resonance, and then attempting to stay in that state of resonance, which, on the vibratory scale is between 400 and 500 on a day in, day out basis. Because as a human being, we're going to have, up and down moments, right? You're going to have an awesome meditation in the morning, right? And you're going to feel on top of the world. Then you're going to get in your car and you're going to go wherever you're going to go. And then some asshole is going to cut you off and you're going to be like, ah, right? But the master is the person that doesn't go, ah, and just is like, that was an interesting move from that asshole, right? And you're just not judging your thought. You're just letting it go. And then you go back to that state of being resonant, right? So, I mean, that's to me, like where, doing the inner work, you can get to that point.
That's amazing, Jay. And it's a great one to finish on. So lastly, where can everybody find you, Jay, before we finish off?
So people can find me on Twitter at jcampbell333, on Instagram at jcampbell333, of course on YouTube, jcampbell333, and then my website is jccampbell.com. Amazing, got 20 to 30,000 people coming there a month, articles on everything from spirituality to peptides to hormones to fasting to fat loss, a lot of stuff. There's amazing stuff there. And again, final statement is, if you're interested in any of my books, I'm happy to give them to you for free. Just go to jccampbell.com/free books, and you can download all of the TOT Bible and the Metabolic Low Torch Diet.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure having you on, Jay. Thank you very much for your time.
And you and I will catch up very soon. Okay, brother?
We'll catch up soon for sure, brother. Take care.
Okay, talk to you soon, man. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
See ya.